As some of you may know, I'm a shadow of extremes, a rogue of contrasts and opposites. Because I can't control my own curiosity, I decided to take a short break from Elden Ring, a game everyone loves, to try Babylon's Fall, a game the internet hates. Experiencing things that are nearly unanimously agreed to be abysmal is just as important, I feel, as experiencing things that everyone agrees are legendary. When we do this, one of two things can happen. We can get lucky or unlucky. If we get unlucky and the game is as bad as everyone says, we get a stronger appreciation of the craftsmanship of game development when we go back to play better games, games that are actually great. Playing awful games allows you to get perspective on just how hard making these things often is, and only playing the best of the best is a good way to lose sight of the challenge inherent to any success in this industry. In short, if you get unlucky enough to play a genuinely bad game, it's good for you. It helps you enjoy great games even more than you already do. If we get lucky though, and the game is actually good, or at the very least enjoyable to us personally, then that's in some ways even better than having the misfortune of playing something terrible. For me, Babylon's Fall landed in the second category, and ended up being something that despite its very real flaws, I enjoyed a great deal over the course of its main story campaign. I got 5 questions about this game that I want to take a moment to answer now. From Brandon, why the fuck are people shitting on this game so brutally? I love this question because while it's blunt, the answer to it can have a level of nuance I appreciate. People are shitting on Babylon's Fall for a variety of reasons, but I'll go over one bad one and one good one. A bad reason, but a very prevalent one, is that many gamers effectively crowdsource their critical thinking from YouTubers, and a popular direction of thinking emerges around certain games. People look at what the internet says about the game and throw their lot in alongside the prevailing thought process at the time. In other words, these particular people are shitting on Babylon's Fall because everyone else is. This is a bad reason to be critical of a game, because you have no leg to stand on when someone else is doing your thinking for you. This isn't so much a judgment of you personally, so don't be upset or anything. Ultimately, the person who suffers most in the end if you take this approach is you yourself. This is a fate I sought to dodge for myself when I decided to play this game. There is nothing that beats first-hand experience in the pursuit of knowledge, after all. A good reason some people are tearing this game down is that it frankly does not put its best foot forward. It's a full-price live service looter slasher with an optional premium battle pass you can buy by paying even more. No matter what anyone tries to tell you, this is simply a bad look, and they must have known players would react negatively to this, so Platinum and Square really have no one to blame but themselves here. Almost everything except for crafting materials and the battle pass is cosmetic, sure. There's no daily energy restrictions like in a gacha game, so you can grind as much as you want and get stronger as much as you wish, with the game also lacking any kind of active PvP, so pay to win isn't really a thing. But none of that matters, because pushing a paid battle pass in addition to a full retail price game is always gonna taste bitter to players who are already looking for a reason to slam you. While a free demo exists that you can download and all your progress carries over to the full game, because of the way the game's progression works, the demo isn't representative of the coolest parts of this game, so even people who would enjoy it, like fans of Destiny, Warframe, Lost Ark, Genshin Impact, or other crunchy, satisfyingly grindy games that you can play to relax while listening to your favorite long-form game essayists in the background, those players won't actually get to experience most of those features. The demo only offers the first 2 areas, and all the cool stuff starts getting unlocked after you finish the 3rd zone. This means demo players don't get access to attack modes. You can switch any of your weapon slots to standard, power, or technical, with technical mode giving you timed combos and other such actions familiar to character action game players, and power mode letting you juggle or stagger enemies more effectively, both of which are parts of combat that were seen to be lacking in Babylon's Fall by players who are veterans of the genre. The demo also lacks access to the blacksmith, which lets you guide your builds in a specific direction with less randomness, and that's something that vertical progression players or ARPG players would have appreciated. It also doesn't let the player try out actual abilities. This is especially insane to me. The demo lets you make characters of what are essentially different classes, but you don't get to use what makes those classes feel different from each other until you're halfway through the main story in the full game, which means you don't get to sample yet another feature some players might enjoy as a role-playing layer. My favorite is an engage that lets me pull myself to an enemy, modified to let me massively increase my damage for a short time when I do. I essentially wanted to try the full game on some level of blind faith, after playing the demo and enjoying the basic feel of dungeon crawling, and I mean very basic. But again, most players won't give you that blind faith, they won't give you the benefit of the doubt, since most have a predisposition to despising live service games, and a lot of Platinum Games fans are bitterly disappointed in this game's very existence, so the people in charge needed to be taking much bigger strides here and enticing people to try it. Even the players that would actually have fun with this game are staying away from it, and that's not their fault, because those strides aren't being taken. Theodore asks, what are the most interesting aspects of the game? To me, what interests me is the combat loop and the vibe of the world, especially the Gideon Coffin system and the way it's reflected in both gameplay and narrative. The story of this game isn't very good most of the time, but some parts of it are cool and appeal to me personally because of similarities to other stories I've enjoyed before. The Gideon Coffin is basically a death sentence that you receive free of charge, lucky you. It's grafted onto your back and dooms you to a horrible fate, but until the destined day arrives, it also lets you wield 4 weapons simultaneously, which is pretty badass, so enjoy it while you can. Whether that means attacking with 4 swords at the same time, charging up 3 bows for massive bursts of range damage, cleaving swarms with double great axes while you poke enemies with a sword in your main hand, or using a shield and a staff to shoot magic while defending yourself, you can use any combo of 4 weapons to kill whatever you want, and the attack modes you can modify each of your weapons to use in the late game provides even more possibilities for how you want to fight. I stick to standard mode most of the time, because I mainly play this game to turn my brain off, but I do have loadouts that go technical or power based on what specific goals I'm chasing at the time. The combat is genuinely good, despite lacking the ability to actually air juggle people and having more in common with Diablo than with Bayonetta. There's something that's secretly kind of genius about stapling gear progression onto a hack and slash game, which I know is some kind of sacrilege, but just like other fetishes, it's hot exactly because it's so wrong. Ghost of Van asks, what surprised you most about it? What surprised me is how enjoyable the gameplay loop actually is, and a certain moment in the midpoint of the main story. It's satisfying to me to just slip into this game for hours, especially if you're the kind of player who likes making alts and playing different kinds of characters with different abilities and weapons. You only have 4 character slots, and you can't delete a character once you make them, which is a strange choice on the part of the developers. What this means is that I recommend you never make 2 characters of the same class. That way you don't screw yourself over and can play anyone you want. Now, about that story moment, one thing I really love in any story is when my expectations of it being a specific genre are subverted or destroyed, or when the creators completely pull the rug out from under me and reveal that the assumptions they caused me to hold were completely false from the get-go. Examples of stories like these are The Matrix, Bloodborne, the Broken Empire trilogy, and Assassin's Creed 1 for players who assumed it was just historical fiction. Basically, any story where what you thought was true about the world or about reality is just completely wrong in some way, and it just blows your mind and is a little scary. Halfway through the main story of Babylon's Fall, a boss you fight reveals the truth of reality to you in a pretty spectacular way. And while it's as generic as anything else in the game, I just can't help myself whenever I see something like this in a story. It's basically the kind of thing I go ham for, and when it happens, I feel like the creators are catering to me specifically. I love that shit. Lowpitch asks, do you see the real world as an oil painting now from Too Much Babylon? Honestly, no, and this is actually something I'm disappointed in. Before release and during the beta tests, lots of players complained about the visual style of the game due to the intensity of its brushwork filter, as Platinum Games called it. Over time, Platinum got to work on quote-unquote improving the graphics, but I think that in some ways, this just made it worse. See, when the brushwork filter was very intense, yes, the game looked pretty blurry, but it looked deliberately so, like you were really inside a living oil painting. I would have accepted changes needed to improve clarity of enemy animations and attacks, that's one thing, but once the developers started making the environments look more like a normal video game, Babylon's Fall actually lost something very important. So now, when players look at the game, all they see is bad graphics compared to other games, instead of interesting and stylized graphics that can't really be compared to anything else. That said, for a really good version of this kind of thing, I recommend you check out Tales of Arise, which itself uses a graphical style called the atmospheric shader, which gives it this interesting, colorful look that's a cross between realism and anime. Finally, Vineth asks, is this game worth playing? I think that until Platinum or Square Enix make some changes, the answer to this is going to be no, unless you're a very specific kind of player for whom this kind of game is your usual stomping ground. If you're a Lost Ark, Genshin Impact, Black Desert, Destiny, or Warframe player, and you also happen to enjoy games like Metal Gear Rising, Devil May Cry, or Nier, you'll find something to enjoy here. That said, it's not worth the full price they're charging. If it ever goes on sale, feel free to go ahead and download the free demo, play through the first 2 full zones that they offer as however many characters you want, and then if you like what you've played and remember that it gets better from there, only then should you invest your money and time into it. But for most people, no, I don't think it's worth it. For me, it is worth playing, because I've started to explore this kind of game more in recent years, and I'm still learning what makes vertical progression tick. I'm researching what it is about grindy looter games that players and developers, especially developers nowadays, are so attached to, other than the obvious stuff like engagement and monetization. So it had a special value to me as an apparently bad, but actually still pretty good example of the genre, and I'm glad I'm playing it. Thanks for watching.